What to do. This is the Brothers on Books podcast, where we find great books that will give you real value and actionable steps and have fun in the process. Please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendation, or if you would like to be a guest host for a particular book you have in mind. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to would be greatly appreciated. Lastly, if you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. For the original episodes, the OGs, please visit brothersonbooks.com. So with that said, I'm Alex Allweil, and with me as always is my brother Jack Allweil. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing quite well, Al. It's been a busy Sunday. I'm tired, but I had fun playing some pickleball today. How are you?
I'm also tired. I also just got back from playing some.
There you go.
It was a pretty good session. So Jack, what book are we doing today?
Today, we are reading Shop Class as Soulcraft by Matthew B. Crawford. Matthew B. Crawford is an American writer and research fellow at the Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture at the University of Virginia. Crawford majored in physics as an undergraduate, then turned to political philosophy. He earned his PhD from the University of Chicago. He is a contributor editor at the New Atlantis and claims to be a motorcycle mechanic. So with that, this was one of the books I picked in our book draft. I heard Matthew speak on the Art of Manliness podcast, which it was a great episode, but it was in relation to his book, Why We Drive, or I think it's called Why We Drive, but we'll have a link to that in the notes. But Al, what were your initial thoughts after reading this book?
I enjoyed the book. My initial thoughts were, I honestly felt like I could relate to a lot of what he was saying when he was talking about in terms of like education and then the value of work. Because he got a PhD in in some type of philosophy or political philosophy, and then went and he's talked about how he went and worked at a think tank, and he just felt sort of, I don't know, I got the impression that he was sort of feeling somewhat like aimless or purposeless, and that he wasn't really producing anything. And I have to say, sometimes, definitely in grad school, I felt like that a lot. I felt like the work that I was doing didn't matter, and no one cared about it. And it's like, and I guess sometimes when you start feeling like that, you're like, why am I doing this if no one cares? Like, what is its purpose? So I don't know. I found it somewhat soothing to listen to other people sort of, I guess, verbalize a lot of internal feelings that I've had throughout my life. How about yourself?
So I would say I echoed your sentiments on probably I guess I would say like the connection between what your actions are and like the results. Because I remember a lot of times with actuarial work, you don't really see the end user. So sometimes you get a little disconnected. And I remember in my first actuarial job, when I was working on this model, it didn't seem like anyone cared about it. I was still like learning some coding and stuff, which was cool, but like it didn't feel like anything mattered. And he did a good job like explain or like kind of putting it into words, that feeling of like, what I'm doing, is it translating into something successful? Like, if you're a mechanic, like, does the thing run or does it not run? I think that like that feedback is important to feel purpose. I did find the book, I was surprised that I thought it was kind of wordy at times, actually. Like I thought it like got down, I thought there was like too much fluff at times in the book. I don't know if you thought that, but like I found myself thinking like, okay, like the ideas are good. I felt like there was just too much. It felt like there was a lot of fluff though to me.
Yeah, there were definitely moments where he got into very, I would say, technical aspects of motorcycles and mechanics that I clearly had no idea what he was talking about. And yeah, I would say sort of the same thing. I just ended up like skimming over them. I'm like, I don't know talking about different like nuts and bolts and like how to clean out like valves and fluid. And I'm like, I have no idea what any of this means. But I agree with sort of what you're saying.
I think I meant more on like it just felt kind of like an academic paper in parts. It was like a very wordy, and I mean I like the book. I think we'll have some things to talk about. But the parts I guess I would start by talking about like the education component. He kind of talks, and this kind of goes to that quote, like whatever gets measured gets managed. And he talks about how grades in school influence what people go after, and it doesn't really become about the learning anymore. And I actually found out from Elena, my wife, that in Austria they actually don't have class ranks, because I remember some kids in our class were like obsessed with their rank. Like I think I was ranked 11th, but I don't remember. I didn't really care about it. I think you were higher. But
I was seventh.
Seventh?
Yeah.
Like, did you think about that like while you were going through school, I guess? Like, did that become like an aim?
No, but
Okay.
I would say the people, well, in my class, I think number one was pretty well established, but I remember number two and number three definitely talking about it and sort of, I distinctly remember the person that finished three talking to me about how he could potentially finish two and being very animated about it.
Yeah, because when you're gunning for those types of grades, it just becomes a relative thing, and it's not really about the underlying learning at that point. And that's kind of, I think, what he's getting at, and I kind of appreciate. I think that is true. I mean, you kind of have like these grade inflation that's going on. And yeah,
I mean, he taught. Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. And like education just sort of, I think he sort of alludes to the fact that a lot of people get education just for the sake of getting education when they really shouldn't. I don't know if you felt that, because I definitely feel like that's true. And even in high school, I felt like there were so many worthless classes that don't really translate to anything. And he sort of opens the book up with talking about how a lot of shop and like woodworking classes are being cut.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you took a woodworking class, right?
I did.
In high school.
I found it quite difficult. I struggled. I definitely didn't get an A. I think I got like a B plus, but it was definitely hard, and I was definitely out of my comfort zone. And like a lot of the people that didn't like do well in a lot of the other classes were like really good in wood shop, because they had been exposed to a lot of it too. Because like we didn't really grow up with like a lot of tools, and I think they grew up with like, a shop full of tools in their garage.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like one of those things, like looking back on high school, like now, as I guess I would call myself an adult, I wish I had more of those skills. Like,
yeah,
I wish I knew, like, because I wish I knew more about cars. I wish I knew more about, like, sort of like what he was talking about, woodworking. And, we had like small engine repair class that, going through it, I just remember thinking, to be honest with you, I remember just sort of thinking like only derelicts take those classes, at least in our high school. That's sort of what it.
I think that's kind of that's kind of why I steered away from those, just because to me it seemed like the type of people that were taking those at our school. I just didn't
found them scary.
Yeah, because we had welding, we had wood shop, we had small engine repair. I did take technology explorations where you would build like boats out of styrofoam, and so I did those. That was fun. I did learn a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I remember thinking the people that took shop class all would like go drink heavily on the weekends and like do a lot of drugs, and I didn't really want to associate with them, and they made me sort of uncomfortable. So I kind of steered away, and I thought the classes were, to be honest with you, somewhat beneath me, somewhat of an elitist standpoint. But now I wish I had way more of those skills. And what do I ever use calculus for? Why was I gung ho on taking like calc and you know.
Mhm.
Obviously the chemistry classes are somewhat relevant to me still, but
Mhm.
calculus is sort of, a waste. And even like the literature classes, I mean, obviously we read a lot, but I probably didn't need, to be able to read, the Iliad and Beowulf.
Yeah,
Those probably
exactly.
haven't really, those probably haven't had a massive positive influence on my life in really any way.
I mean, I would say they're almost detractors because I that made me hate reading. I did not like reading. I think it was more though that those types of books I just didn't like because I mean I like reading now. So if I probably would have read similar books back then, I probably would have liked it then too.
Yeah, I mean, they're hard to understand. They're in like poem form, and they're talking in like ancient, like almost like Shakespeare. I feel like is always impossible to understand what he's saying when I read him in high school. But yeah, I just never. I also didn't really enjoy that. But even in high school, I would go home and I would read like at night, like fantasy and science fiction that I loved. Just the books in class, I did not like that much.
Mm-hmm. So how would you say you feel after doing like a project now? Because we kind of have had a renaissance in our lives in terms of doing these like do-it-yourself projects.
Oh yeah. So when he was talking about like pride in your work, I feel incredible pride. Like, I mean, I think I built after the tornado hit my house in 2020. I The insurance money gave me what I thought was like an obscene amount of money for my brick mailbox, and I was like, I can figure out how to lay brick. So like, yeah, I made it a project. I went and, bought the brick and I bought the mortar and bought some tools and built a brick mailbox and then pocketed some cash. And I felt incredibly proud of my mailbox, even though it's like, I think people that do a lot of masonry work would be like, oh yeah, it's super easy. But yeah, I was super proud of it. And we then built a grill for dad at home, and I I feel very proud of that as well. But sort of tethering back into my graduate work, when I completed this project in graduate school, I honestly like it was kind of one of those things like, oh great, now I can stop doing this. I don't have to do this work that honestly no one really cares about anymore.
Mhm.
So like I didn't feel a huge amount of pride in that accomplishment, I guess, which is kind of, I would say it's kind of sad. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, I guess would you say the pride comes from like the immediate feedback? Because like when you built the mailbox, I mean it's standing, and
right.
you can use it
You
to
can
actually
see
get
it,
your mail,
and
like
I can,
and it works. So it shows you at least we're at least kind of competent.
yeah, exactly. I can see what I did. It's standing there. All of my neighbors saw me doing it. They all told me they thought it looked good. Uh, I felt very happy with how it turned out, even though, if I was being hypercritical, there definitely are some flaws, but just acknowledging it and to show that you're successful at something, I think is very gratifying. Same with the grill. I mean, every time dad talks to me about how he's using the grill, I feel very proud of
Yeah,
what we did.
yeah.
Uh,
Even though it might not have been like super, was it plumb or just
yeah,
straight, but it's functional.
right. And I mean, Scott, this a guy that does a lot of work for our parents, said that he thought it was a good job for people that had never really laid brick before. And I found that super encouraging. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
yeah. And then you take right because he's very very good at all that type of stuff.
yeah.
Uh, so right, and then you feel more proud, like you get positive feedback from someone that I would say is like a master.
Mhm.
Uh,
I
you
guess
feel good.
the other part I really could relate to was he talks about how he tells that story of when his dad came up with some equation, or he talked about like untying shoelaces in
Yeah,
some sense, but it was all like in math and theoretical. And he kind of brought up the point, yeah, like things can sound good in theory, but when you get out there and there's different materials working against you, and I immediately thought of the calisthenics park that you helped me build a bit in my backyard. And the thing with the calisthenics park, I had these like 6x6s that we were putting into the hole, and the ground here is like clay-like. So every time it felt like I was trying to get it level, it would just sink a little bit. And it was just like a constant like issue to try to keep the bars level while I was pouring the concrete. And that's kind of what it made me think of. Because like in theory, yeah, I drew out the plans and it's all perfectly, 90-degree angles and perfectly level. But there's all these things that are working against you in the real world.
Yeah, that sort of makes me think of that Mike Tyson quote. I think everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Punch in the mouth. Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
He also brought up the other thing that I could kind of relate to is he brought up the master apprentice like relationship. And I don't know if you really have but that was something else that I actually sort of did feel like I could relate to in grad school, when older people would give you tips on like physical, chemistry is sort of a weird thing because there's a lot of theory, but there are definitely skills like being a practical like experimentalist, and you definitely get better as you get older and get more experience, just like a tradesman. So when he was talking about like master sort of saying things to apprentices, I also could relate to that. When elders, it was for the most part for me, it was elder students would say, or just more senior scientists would be like, oh, you should do such and such like this way. This is more efficient. Like, you need to be careful of like X, Y, and Z. I definitely felt like I could relate to that. And I don't know. I guess, I don't know, you want to comment? Do you feel like there is that sort of that much in like corporate America? Did you feel like you had that?
My first boss, I'd say, well, he stayed in touch with me even after I left. And it was like a cool mentor and would give insights on to like what to check if you see an error, how to go about tracing through errors, like in Excel workbooks and things like that. I did think it was, I guess along those lines, he talked about, I think he called it tacit knowledge instead of like explicit knowledge, but like,
okay, yeah.
Tacit knowledge, I think he said was like kind of like skills and knowledge that can't really be put into words. And he talks about how the firefighters kind of know when to leave the house like before it's about to burn down.
Collapse.
Yeah.
It's just like almost like intuition from experience.
Yes, exactly. And I think, it's kind of, that made me think a little bit about that because I guess that's something we don't really talk about a lot, I feel.
Which is, I think it's that. That's in my opinion, that's essentially just experience, right? And that's really what makes someone an expert or a master in their craft, is having the experience to, on the fly, be able to adjust to different variables in the field. He was talking about, I think the people that made wagons or wheels, and how they had to, not only know how to like theoretically make the wheels, but how to know what types of trees they were to use, when to cut the trees down, how long to season the trees for, then how to shave, because like no trees are alike, how to shave the oblong, wood into, usable pieces. And I think that really is only stuff that comes with time and experience of working in the field.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. You want to go to your pickleball ad?
Yeah. So pickleball, the greatest sport you've never heard of. Pickleball is the fastest growing leisure sport in the United States. It is a mix between tennis and table tennis. However, don't let the average age of participant in this sport fool you. The game has fierce competition and only the will of a champion can thrive. Go buy some paddles and balls and play pickleball, the greatest sport you've never heard of. Yeah, so I think you said, I mean, I've talked about, we both played today. Actually, I have a tournament coming up next weekend locally here. It's shaping up to be, I think it's going to be a good tournament. I'm excited to play. Playing both men's doubles and mixed doubles. Should be a fun time.
There you go. And hopefully you can come to Charlotte so we can play doubles here in May.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. I haven't played a tournament in a while, so.
I think probably the last one you played was when we played in Atlanta, right?
Yep, that's correct. Trying to think of other big. Okay, so one other talking point I thought was really interesting was he talks about how when initially, I guess when the assembly line was brought into the world, a lot of the workers didn't like it, and they were forced to pay those employees more. And I guess the problem was some of those people that were making more and more money then chose to work less. And how do you incentivize people to work more if they feel like they already have enough to survive and do what they want to do? And they talked about, setting up, this consumer debt where now someone could go and buy something that they want instead of what they theoretically or they could buy right now. So what they used to just think about, now they could actually acquire. I thought that was pretty interesting and also a little sad.
I mean, right, because I think he was saying like the work was so monotonous, it made people bored almost, right?
Yeah.
And then when he was going through that part or what you just said about like, how do you incentivize people to work more when they feel like they already have what they need? That is literally exactly how I feel.
Yeah, because I wrote this down. So the assembly line was introduced in 1913, and he said, so I guess this is Ford. So every time the firm wanted to add 100 men, it actually needed to hire 963 guys.
Right. Yeah.
So and there was and then changing attitudes toward consumption played a big role in that period. So that was another interesting thing, I guess.
I mean, just overall, I do tend to agree with his general, outlook, which is that I think a lot of people do sort of look down on trades or craftsmen.
Yeah, I mean, and this comes back to that like Book of Numbers book where the women don't really they see status as some, and they look down upon
thing. Right.
Yeah,
like a plumber.
and it's I just don't understand how that came to be and where that kind of stems from. I just I don't know.
I mean, there's something like, well, sort of what he was, I felt like what he was kind of saying was that people think like people that do manual work aren't intelligent. But he was making the point that you have to be very creative and be able and adaptable almost. And then when he was describing some of these things with these bikes, like all these variations and variables and different things he was checking, I'm like, yeah, this sounds very intellectually stimulating.
Yeah, it's like surgery, but on a piece of equipment. It kind of made me think like back to. Now I lived with the med school fraternity for a little bit, and they would talk about in the surgery room how it actually was almost analogous to like a car shop. That sometimes the doc would say what music he wants to listen to, and like he would go to work on this person, and it's very similar to like a mechanic working on a bike or a car.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely, well, and then also sort of relating to the assembly line and people sort of getting, I would say, bored. On like my day to day, I feel like a lot of my work is very repetitive, and yeah, a lot of times I get bored. I'm like,
Mhm,
yeah, this can, if you just do the same thing over and over again, it gets boring.
mhm.
And I mean, I have some variation, but I can only imagine, I can't even imagine how boring it would have been just to work on an assembly line. I would hate it. Yeah, I think I would hate it. And a lot of times, yeah, people are like, oh, but they were getting paid so much, and he sort of makes the, I don't know, but like, they're way more important things than money. Like if you just absolutely hate your life, like I don't think the money really matters that much.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that goes back to whatever gets measured gets managed. And if what you're measuring is just how much you're making, and that's how you, I guess, assign your worth or your
Worth,
value
right,
or your happiness, that's what you're going to try to optimize. And
right.
I guess that begs the question, what should we be trying to optimize? How do we think about happiness, I guess? And I mean, should, instead of keeping track of our net worth, like in dollar terms, maybe we should be keeping track of how many hours we get to play pickleball, or how many, I don't know,
How much
runs we get to
free,
go on, or
yeah, how much free time you get is, I
yeah.
think, what I think that's what I would look for is how much how I can optimize my lifestyle. I think I recently listened to, I think, one of your favorite books, The 4 Hour Work Week.
Mhm.
And I could really, after listening to it, I could see why you're always talking about it. And he really talks about just lifestyle optimization. And I think that's something I've kind of now taken to heart a little bit. I mean, I would say I was before, but now I'm like really thinking about how can I, just work as little as I can so I can go do hobbies that I want to do, uh, like read more books and, post podcasts.
Yeah. Or how he talks a lot about, like, you really see what a man is, or a woman, when you look at what they do for leisure, and can you somehow combine your work and your leisure, because then it kind of blends, and it probably doesn't feel like work at all. And he talks about that community aspect where everyone around you is helping you not just have more fun but also get better at work. And he talks about, like, his speed shop days, and how everyone's constantly talking about things they've done to their bikes or cars to help them go faster, and it's constantly getting iterated to get better. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And he talks about how, as these companies that get bigger and bigger in scale, they kind of lose touch with the community, and, well, yeah, what that meant at the ground level when it was small. And I mean, he actually got into, like, what I thought he was going to give us, like an '08 financial crisis, because he talked about how the banks used to really be like a servant of the community, and how they would, very seriously take the duty of underwriting a person to get money, because that money was basically the community's money. And so, like, would this be a good investment? And now it's kind of transformed into a lot of these loans originators, they just want to make the loan and then they sell it off, and it kind of becomes disconnected from their community.
Yeah, Peter Schiff talks about that all the time,
Uh-huh.
about how, smaller individual banks were better for that reason, because they took more, they did more diligence in the loans,
Yeah.
to make sure they would recoup their the loan.
Yeah. So here's a question. What type of project do you have on the horizon? What do you want your next project to be?
Well, if I buy a house down here, I would like to build myself a grill.
Okay. Like a brick barbecue or something a little different?
I would
Right.
probably just I would honestly probably make the same grill we made for Dad, except I would make it probably a little more fancy, probably a little bigger. I mean, I don't
Okay.
even really grill that much, but I would probably do that.
Okay.
Yet again, if I had the space, I would like to. I think it's sort of cheating. At some point, I really would like to build myself a cordwood either sauna or house. But I need to scale up to a house, so I would probably start with a sauna.
Uh-huh.
Uh, because
Okay.
I did start that, and you helped me with
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
I built a pretty good wall there, or we built a pretty good wall. I always got a lot of compliments for that wall. It's weird. I honestly almost want to talk to, people just moved into that house about a month ago, and I kind of want to talk to them to see how they feel about it. Because I have no idea.
Are you going to ask? So maybe you should explain to people what you actually were trying to build.
Oh, okay. So yeah, sorry. So cordwood is a type of building where you take, if you can envision stacked firewood, stacked on its like log end. So you see the inners of the log, and you lay the logs down like it's like you're stacking firewood, but you lay mortar in between. So you make a wall essentially of firewood. And what I was trying to do was I was trying to build, a circular sauna using cordwood. So I was trying to go up using this technique of building, and then put, the electrical I wasn't going to do, but I was going to build like a close to an 8 foot structure using cordwood, and as a circle, I was going to roof it, and then I was going to have someone do the electrical to put in the electrical heater, and then I was going to have a sauna in my yard. So I got up about 4 feet in wall height, and then unfortunately I was somewhat slow, and then I graduated and had to move. But it was fun. It took me a long time. I had to dig out a pit. I had to lay a foundation. I think I laid close to 3,000 pounds of concrete, which isn't really that much, but it was a lot for one person in a day. And then I put boards, and I made a level surface and put boards over the foundation. And then I laid the wood, and, it was a lot of fun. And, you helped me, and, my girlfriend at the time helped me a lot, and Doug, my roommate, helped me some. And yeah, it was a fun community experience.
Yeah. Everyone feels connected with the structure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think your next project's going to be?
So I think my next project's going to be tiling around our fireplace. So we're redoing our kitchen right now, and talking about backsplashes and going to the tile shop. I just started thinking about maybe doing the fireplace myself, because we had tiled some of our parents' rentals in the past. But I've house, and I've never done it all by myself, including like from start to finish though. So I thought I would do that. And it's not a big area. It's probably only like, I guess, 25 square feet or something like that. And thought that would be a fun little project to do.
Okay. It'd be interesting. It would be interesting to see if you enjoy it more. I remember as kids, I remember you always seemed to enjoy tiling. And I just remember thinking, I don't understand how like Jack likes this. I mean, I just remember thinking my knees. I mean, I wouldn't say I have bad knees, but it definitely doesn't seem like I have good knees. And I just remember thinking when we were doing that, my knees were absolutely killing me from bending over and being on my knees all day.
Yeah.
And you just were like, "Oh yeah, this is fun." I'm like, "Man, what are you talking about?"
Well, it was kind of like I don't know, because we never actually laid the cement. We were mostly just laying the tile and doing the grout, if I remember correctly. I don't think I ever actually mixed or laid the concrete.
Well, so you mean like the underneath for the
right
foundation?
No, for like under the tiles.
You mean the stucco or whatever that?
Yeah, I think it's actually concrete.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. That's what the tile shop guy was telling me. So
I would double check that. I don't know. I think you lay a foundation of concrete like for the house, but then you apply like some stucco for the tile, don't you?
I it might not be exactly concrete, but it's basically the same ingredient. It might be in a different ratio, but he kept calling it concrete. So
Okay.
I'm gonna call it concrete.
All right.
But I'll probably pick big tile so I don't have to lay many spacers and whatnot.
Okay. Are you gonna cut
So
it?
I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
So did you have like a favorite message or quote from this book?
I mean, it kind of, it kind of sort of reaffirmed a lot of my feelings of education, which is that a lot of people go to college and that honestly shouldn't go. And I think he had this sort of funny uh, anecdote where he was like, people go and get a degree. And then like the most people that go to community college are people that have degrees, but are then going to get some type of trade skill so they can be actually employable. And
Okay.
I thought that was like pretty humorous because I'm thinking like, how many people, go to college and get these degrees that are just, there's no really field for it, or the field is so small, you have to be like the top, 0.1% of a person to like make it in that field.
Mhm.
Um, he sort of briefly brought up this point about education and wealth. And this is something I don't remember exactly where it was in the book, but like I think a lot of people think that if you become educated, you get wealthy. Like, and they extrapolate that to a country. Like, if you get a country more educated, the country gets wealthier. But and I've heard other people talk about this as well, but it's actually the reverse, that countries become wealthy and then they get educated. Like, so if you think even on America, like America generated most of its wealth in like the early 1900s, right? Late 1800s. A lot of people became wealthy and then they started sending their kids to school and then they became educated. And then everyone, for the most part, became educated. But it was education followed from wealth. It wasn't becoming educated, then made people wealthy.
That's a good point.
So like,
I've
I
heard people
guess,
say that.
yeah, I guess the way I think about it is like education is a way almost to preserve wealth. Like, because if you have someone, so like, an engineer is a good example. If you come from like an upper middle class family and you go to college and you become like an electrical engineer, it is safe to say that you will be employable and you will be successful. Um, so it's a way to, I would say, preserve wealth. Um,
So
but if you,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but if you go like, I don't know, my boss's daughter like majored in like feminist literature or something, and I mean, I shouldn't, whatever. I'm already saying it, but like, now she works at a dog kennel and as a barista. So, I mean, like, what was the point of those 4 years other than to have fun?
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, just admit you're going to have fun, I guess. I
Right.
mean,
And
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think
yeah,
you probably learn about yourself in college. Like, you probably do learn a lot about yourself in college and become mature a little bit.
yeah.
What about you? What was your main
Um,
takeaway?
yeah, well, my favorite like paragraph or quote was near the end of the book in the concluding remarks. That there's a paragraph that goes like this: too often the defenders of free markets forget that what we really want is free men. Having a few around requires an economy in which the virtue of independence is cultivated and a diversity of human types can find work to which they are suited. And I liked that quote, and it kind of got me thinking back to the economics in one lesson book, how we were having that discussion on like, what is the point of a country? And like, wouldn't we all, I at least thought like reading economics in one lesson. I thought basically there should be no countries. Like that would be the most efficient because people could find where they're best suited and where their skills are best suited. Because I don't know, like someone might be a great pastry chef, but can't go work in Paris, or someone wants to be a bamboo or matcha farmer, but can't go work in Japan. I don't know. I like that idea of like freedom in the sense of free men and finding what's best suited for you.
Okay. I sort of also, yeah, finding the work that best suits you. I agree with. I think countries are important though.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So anything else?
I think that's probably about all I have for today.
Okay.
You want to take us out, Jack?
Yeah. Please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendations, or if you'd like to be a guest host for a particular book you have in mind. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to this would be greatly appreciated. And lastly, if you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. So I think we altered the order a little bit, right? Because we pushed back dynamic hedging. So I think next week I'll be sharing my solo mission of a Robert Kiyosaki book, Second Chance. And then the following week, we will be plugging our guest, Adam Rothstein, who wrote a book called Chess, A Game for Peace and Prosperity. And then I'm not sure what you'll do for your solo mission, but the dynamic hedging book will, I guess, be in 4 weeks' time, because that book is just a beast of a book.
Yeah, it very much reads like a textbook.
It literally looks like a textbook. I mean,
yeah,
it's over 400 pages of formulas. And
I mean, I think a lot of that's appendix, isn't it?
I don't know, man.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, this was probably not a great choice, but I'm sure we will learn a lot.
Yeah, and we have gotten Mark from Options Bootcamp to agree to come on with us, so that should be a fun listen.
Yeah.
And so
this will honestly probably be more beneficial, I would say, for me than you probably know a lot of this already. But I'm saying though, you'll probably be exposed to more exotic ways to trade options, which I guess you've really been getting into.
Yes, I think on average, well, a couple months ago, there were times where I'd be having like 30 to 40 options expiring any given Friday.
Yeah, it seems like a lot.
Yeah, but I've tried to tone it down, spread it out a little bit more, and try to do less, but more impactful trades.
There you go.
Okay, Al.
All right.
Good episode. Talk to you later.
Bye.